Consume Product Award. For Best Product, the nominees are Enemy Approaching, Scum,
Uh-oh. Stinky. Poop. Poopies. Funny poopies. La 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 la. Funny poop. Poop funny. Wee. Yay, more poopy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the most anticipated Vidya event of the year. That's right, we're back again with what is known as the VGAs. This is, believe it or not, the 9th annual Vidya Game Awards. This show that we started at the beginning of the previous decade is, despite all odds, still going strong. A lot of Anons have been working extremely hard to put together an excellent show for you this year, so I'll get out of your way and let the show begin. Enjoy.
Buy My Game Award for Most Blatantly Promoted Game. The nominees are World of Warcraft Classic, Anthem, Death Stranding, Borderlands 3, Raid: Shadow Legends. Warning, enemy approaching. Raid: Shadow Legends. Hello, you absolute legends. Before we get to the winner, we'd like to take a moment to mention this show's sponsor, Raid: Shadow Legends. Raid has smashed the mobile market this past year with detailed models, beautiful environments, and a smooth 60 FPS gameplay experience. Raid: Shadow Legends ensures the highest quality mobile experience that competes with consoles and PC as well. Every champion can be customized with tons of unique gear and ridiculous skills to help you plan out your perfect party and conquer your foes with strategy. With over 10 million unique downloads, over 300,000 reviews, and a 5-star rating on the Google Play Store, Raid continues to grow by the day. And if you join now with our special offer, you'll receive 50,000 silver and a free epic champion. Download the game now and look for our clan by searching Vidya. Good luck, and we'll see you there. Now back to the award. The winner for the Buy My Game Award is Raid: Shadow Legends. Raid has smashed the mobile market this past year with detailed models, beautiful environments, and a smooth 60 FPS gameplay experience. Raid: Shadow Legends ensures the highest
IP Twist Award. For Best New Implementation of an Old Franchise, the nominees are Tetris 99, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Luigi's Mansion 3, Devil May Cry 5, Fire Emblem Three Houses,
Warning, enemy approaching.
Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 2 could have easily been a reskin of a post-RE4 era game, but Capcom held back just enough to stay true to the original and the timeline. After all, in 2, Leon is still a fresh rookie and hasn't gone past small time to learn all his fancy tricks. Menu management is smoother, some puzzles were altered with new ones being added and none of them pull a BioShock Infinite card. The new map system is a godsend though, keeping important memos for you so you can keep on surviving. The bone-chilling aesthetic is felt more than ever, with gruesome visuals and spine-tingling sound production that will leave you squeamish. It's a shame the original soundtrack is DLC, because it still works great here. With 2020 still young, we're excited for the release of the Resident Evil 3 remake, and we hope Capcom can keep up the good work.
Just clean.
Warning, entering ecological dead zone. Adding report to databank.
Crater Edge.
Oh, you did. Wait.
Did I go too far?
Good Deed Award for biggest redemption in gaming. The nominees are Valve, Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, Capcom, warning, enemy approaching. Capcom has been on an upwards momentum after breaking trust and money since Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. A much needed change of pace after the 2013 DMZ and Street Fighter V, among other flops. And go figure, the best way to redeem yourself is to, surprise, surprise, listen to your fucking fans. After bringing back some older franchises with a breath of life, experimenting with new IPs on the mobile market, and even announcing some re-releases of smash hits in the future, the Big C could finally be turning things around, and hopefully once and for all.
Smug Pessimist Award for Most Disappointing Game. The nominees are Anthem, Cube World, Death Stranding, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Kingdom Hearts 3, warning, enemy approaching. Pokemon Sword and Shield. Somehow, Sword and Shield isn't as basic as Let's Go Pikachu Eevee, but damn does it try. For the normie fans, the thought of a console Pokemon game has been tantalizing for years, begging Nintendo for some mythical open-world Pokemon game with a AAA budget and MMO elements. But instead, Pokemon has increasingly prioritized its social aspects the last few gens, at the cost of making the single-player progressively worse. Masuda and Game Freak are still making bare-bones regions for the ADHD mobile generation. So now we have single-floor caves, landmarks you can't even explore, a single lazy battle facility, and the worst ever use of raid-style battles, which magically become RNG garbage when you play alone. Even then, the multiplayer aspect is even worse than 4th gen, since on top of paying for online, there's barely anything to do. What really sucks is there's a number of new quality of life improvements that benefit raising, breeding, and battling, but there's nothing worth using them on. Game Freak rushed this out the door, and it shows. Splitting the team for that little town hero garbage didn't help either. One last thing. Whoever thought cramming all the rare Pokemon in the Lake of Outrage was such abysmal spawn rates can bite my ass.
Hate Machine Award for crimes against gaming. The nominees are SJWs, Google Stadia,
we didn't live
Blizzard,
up to the high standards that we really set for ourselves. And the second,
Bethesda,
Look at this
Epic
dude.
Game Store,
Wait till you see the. No, 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 no.
Warning, enemy approaching. Blizzard. 2019 was just not Blizzard's year, and that can't be blamed on anyone but themselves. The staff here at the VGAs are probably not the best people to criticize a company for bending the knee to China, but it's alright, because Blizzard staff seems to be doing so as well, scheduling walkouts and outdoor protests of their own employer. Indeed, it seems as though work conditions in general around the office are worth getting upset about, with it apparently being a common sight to see Uber stickers on employee cars in the parking lot. Assuming the employees survived the 800-person purge during their most financially successful year of all time. But we're getting ahead of ourselves and jump straight to the staff's problems, and not the consumers. Let's just go down the list, or else we'll be here all day. World of Warcraft has concluded possibly its worst expansion yet, with cut content and plot lines, poor balance, mind-numbing content, and a clear rush towards the finish line as they struggle to prepare for Shadowlands. Heroes of the Storm was effectively gutted, killing a large portion of the staff and the entirety of the pro scene, without so much as even alerting players beforehand that their contracts would not be renewed. Overwatch, as it turns out, has been completely ignored the past several years because they were preparing for a sequel. A sequel that is so similar to the original that they're cross-compatible, and will both be receiving the same content in the future. Warcraft 3 fans are upset over the recently released Reforged edition, feeling as though the company promised far more than they delivered, on top of gutting many of the previous online features and stealthily updating their terms of service for their custom games. Reports came out for Diablo 3 that apparently it had been so grossly mishandled that much of the info that's been coming out to Kotaku in recent months was leaked by the staff out of pure frustration. StarCraft 2 is still forgotten. Hearthstone is stagnant and has basically become an auto-battler. And of course, who could forget Hong Kong and their knee-jerk reaction to one pro's support of the protests, as well as their half-assed apology at BlizzCon. You get the picture. Now, this award has already gone on way too long, and that was just the abbreviated version. But we'll just leave it there, and instead end with a celebration that Bungie has reclaimed their freedom once more. Good job, guys.
VGA exclusive premiere.
And the
nominees
are Banjo Reveal, Cyberpunk 2077, Devil May Cry 5, Final Fantasy VII Remake, No More Heroes 3.
All yoked and powerful and trying to take over the world or something.
Warning, enemy approaching. Cyberpunk 2077.
This game has been hyped for years. Ever since the messy divorce, weebs alike have been wondering what an independent Kojima could pull off with full creative control, away from Konami's oppression. The trailer we got was a masterpiece of storytelling and visual arts.
Cut! We gave you the wrong script!
Wait, Death Stranding lost again? It's a Kojima game and this is V.
Yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 won instead.
DMC5 wasn't a fluke. Oh my god. It happened. It finally happened. Hey, John, get in here.
I heard just before you called me. I can't believe they've finally gotten over his bullshit.
This is insane.
Beat, whoever edited this award.
Hey.
What do you need?
Here, take a look at this.
We're finally free.
Holy shit.
We're finally free!
Woo! Yeah! That's what I'm talking about!
How great is it that no one needs to wait a single moment before we all come together to improve our world? Without deviation from the Kojimbo sweeping norm, progress is not possible. You have made that progress, V. Last year wasn't a fluke. You fucks have finally gotten over Kojumbo's bullshit. This is an important piece of history for the show, and we are so proud of you for bucking the trend. On behalf of the guy who wrote this speech, Kobimpus can go fuck himself.
Where the fuck did everyone go? Oh shit. Cyberpunk 2077 has a really good trailer that makes the 12-year wait at this point worth it. Also Keanu.
Welcome.
Detective Pikachu.
City. A celebration of the harmony between
Sonic the Hedgehog. Mortal Kombat.
On the trail of a
Super Mario Bros.
And a mystical meteorite.
Street Fighter. Detective Pikachu. Adapting a video game to a movie has never really been an easy task, but somehow Detective Pikachu, of all things, managed to do it surprisingly well. Typically, these films get muddled in the details of the games, incorporating either too much or too little of the source material, and just souring the whole product as a result. But Rob Letterman and his crew knew just how much they should pull from the title and what exactly they should leave behind, giving us an hour and a half of pure fun. The photorealistic redesign of many of the Pokemon somehow makes them work when alongside live-action humans, and a fully intertwined Pokemon and human world somehow feels almost realistic in just how much they're incorporated into many of the designs and aesthetics of human society. While it's arguable whether this is the first truly good video game movie or not, At the very least, the general consensus is that it's the first widely appealing, which is hopefully a sign of what's to come in future films. And who knows, maybe we'll get a third Hitman reboot someday that isn't garbage.
Plot and Backstory Award for Best Representation of Women. The nominees are Resident Evil, Code Vein, Atelier Ryza. Oh yeah. Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Warning, enemy approaching.
There's nothing wrong with a little thirst every now and then, and the world of Code Vein knows a little something about sucking and slurping some liquids down. You know, because of the vampires. Every few months we were blueballed with more and more delays, until they finally let go of all inhibitions and released. With an in-depth character creator that lets me customize my perfect experience, and a dark world filled with gothic waifus, I can dominate or be dominated by the Dark Souls-like experience. With gameplay as hard as me, Code Vein will leave you squirming in your seat with every agonizing inch you go. Playing this game was a truly captivating experience, and like many things in life, you'll never forget your first time. Code Vein's release was like the finale to a week-long edging session, and in the end, we'd say it was worth the wait. Oh yeah.
The Billy Harrington Award for Best Representation of Men. The nominees are Devil May Cry 5, Death Stranding, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, Resident Evil 2. Warning, enemy approaching. Devil May Cry 5. The time has come, and so have we. We're grateful for every new DMC release where we get to appreciate our boys, their big swords, and what they love to do with them. We don't know where we'd be without our bi-decenerary glimpses at lovely Nero, Dante, Virgil, and the mongering whores who've kept them stolen away for so long. Yeah, sure, DMC5 may have taken a little stick for being a corridor fighter, but we know at least 3 guys who can come down our corridors any day.
I got contacts with all the 3 major gangs. You didn't think I was gonna get to?
Who sent you? Who's your boss? Enough. If you don't tell me, I'll beat it out of you. Is that what you want?
Patriotism is dead. There's only rebels and tyrants now. This can only end badly for you. It'll be war. It'll take place near the Familia.
Leo.
I will avenge my father!
Life's a bitch and then you die. Bumper sticker philosophy.
Tablet Mode Award for Worst Graphics.
And the
Nominees are Crackdown 3, Jump Force, Pokemon Sword and Shield, WWE 2K20, Y2K, a postmodern RPG. Warning, enemy approaching. Pokemon Sword and Shield. When the initial rumors of Pokemon's first mainline console game came around, many die-hard fans hoped that Game Freak would deliver on the promised great leap forward that was hotly desired for the stale series. Yet, inevitably, as more and more of Sword and Shield was shown off, the more cynical V became. Did Game Freak even try? They went on record to say that Pokemon facilities and mechanics were to be cut for the sake of improved graphics and animation. Need I remind you, this franchise is bigger than Mickey Mouse and Star Wars. We expected the jump into proper consoles with the Switch would allow Game Freak to properly take advantage of the new platform to stretch their visual muscles and give us more to look at. Instead, we got reused assets, low-res models, and lazy animations for 90% of all Pokemon. At the very least, though, if there's one thing they nailed, it's making Great Britain look miserable.
Insight, foresight, more sight.
8K Ultra HD 2160p Retina Display Enabled Award for Best Graphics. Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice.
Metro Exodus. Death Stranding.
Devil May Cry 5.
Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Warning, enemy approaching.
Resident Evil 2 Remake. RE7 may have been the first to use the RE engine, but RE2 takes the grotesque to new heights. Blood effects that were borderline comedic are now blood-curdling, and the filthy anatomy details will send shivers down your spine. Gore aside, the dreary atmosphere has been amplified, with once bright and clean areas looking downright dingy and desecrated. What little light there is works so well with all this that it blows away even the best-looking ports of the original 2. You'll cringe at cadavers, stare at Ada's armpits, and watch Mr. X crush your skull in his hands, only to think, his model looks really nice up close.
VGA exclusive premiere. For worst writing, the nominees are Anthem,
This storm is ripping our reality apart. Starting with you.
Borderlands 3,
Library, because you told me to stay there. Here, because it's where I still am.
Kingdom Hearts 3,
I'll save Aqua. How? By beating the crap out of her. Understandable.
Wolfenstein, Youngblood, Y2K, a postmodern RPG. Warning, enemy approaching.
Disappointed? Your mistake was thinking this show wasn't rigged. Yes, from its characters to its narrative, Y2K's writing is so poorly executed that we couldn't come up with anything more to say. So, we'd like to offer Axe Studios the following poem as an apology. Andrew has a game on the store, earning poor reviews all around the world, it seems. When your game's this bad, even Murakami's prose will earn a red thumbs down on Steam. A drowning girl's story. You stole and it was not ignored. Lowering the hood of her red jacket, she screams. Andrew's game just won the award.
Tahiti Award for Best Writing.
The nominees are
Death Stranding, Pathologic 2, Disco Elysium, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, Devil May Cry 5.
Hard to say. It's the only memory I have of this since we were kids.
Warning, enemy approaching.
You know, sometimes V manages to surprise everybody with their taste. Disco Elysium had all the usual signs of your typical pretentious indie game. Weird aesthetics, no dedicated combat system, political talking points, but it's the execution that brought it to V's choice, with the grungy 50s era setting. Disco Elysium seems more aligned with the old point-and-click adventure games than traditional Western RPGs. But it's not only the fitting dialogue choices, the colorful characters, or its realistic depiction of a town addled by depression that makes it deserving of this award. No, Disco Elysium's quality writing is shown through several different aspects. The substitution of a traditional RPG skill tree with instead having voices in your head, Every skill tree is given a personality that chimes in, turning what would be a boring conversation into a round table of shitposts. The incredibly intricate discussion on how politics and ideologies aren't inherently better than one another and about how they are executed on the world in a way that matters. The setting simply oozes Eastern European idiosyncrasies and their unique take on cop fiction. The game reflects the current state of V. Anger, depression, narcissism, a habit for rambling and going off topic, and constant wars about identity. It's no wonder that it won V's Best Writing Award.
Oh. I'm now authorized to detain. Oh, yeah. Now we're talking.
Drop it. Yeah.
How could you leave me like that? Alone. In darkness. In the past. I know your darkest secrets. I know your most devilish sexual fantasies. I thought we had a true connection. I thought you cared about me, but I guess you don't. Just leaving me behind for some village idiot to find. And of all places. Of fucking medieval times, Randy? What magical bullshit will save you now?
Blue Checkmark Award for Most Pointless Controversy. The nominees are THQ Nordex, 8chan, Ask Me Anything.
Come here!
Sekiro Easy Mode.
Persona 5's Misheard Lyrics.
Tifa's Tits.
Soap bottle label
Ion
gay,
Fury
a play
Gay
on the
Shampoo
Olay
Bottle.
brand. And Fury published her 3D Realms to issue a statement. Voidpoint admit.
Warning. Enemy approaching.
Persona 5's Misheard Lyrics. Only on an outlet as retarded as Kotaku could an absolute retard have gotten that retarded article published and kept her job. What kind of retarded life must you live to mishear a Japanese woman trying to speak English in a song and immediately assume that she is making fun of retarded people? And how retardedly stubborn do you have to be even after everyone retorted that you are being a retard? To dig your heels in, issue a half-hearted retraction, and continue to spout retarded nonsense about how it was problematic if you were even able to misinterpret the song. The retarded article is still up today, further proving that Kotaku will publish anything, no matter how retarded, as long as it gets some clicks. A retarded waste of time for everyone involved. Completely and utterly stupid.
Koski BlizzCon. It's pretty lame. I guess I'll check it out. Alright, press start. Yo! Don't Bissell Ghost, holy shit! Oh shit! That's a fucking unblockable? The fucking little Fritz. Asai is so fucking cool, I can drain your health and shit. Oh my god. Resurrection? Nah, fuck you, Barry nigga. Fuck you. Wait, what? Did he say Seek Heil? He said Seek Heil, right? Let's check back at the graphics. Let's have a look at that frame again. This can't be. No, it can't be right, right? You can't Seek Heil like that, can you? He did. Oh god, what's Twitter gonna say when they found out I played this? Oh, all those blue check marks. God.
Cease
Shut Up and Jam Gaiden.
Mario Royale.
Black Mesa.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, The Seventh Stand User. Warning, enemy approaching.
Another Metroid 2 remake.
AM2R came out swinging, even if it was shot out the gate with a C and D. Through the magic of file sharing, we can still play this great game. A fan game that spent over a decade in development that actually delivered. That fact alone is worthy of recognition. Looking at you, Mother 4. Even compared to the original NES game, M2 always felt strange, for better and worse. But AM2R, despite its humble name and origins, helped breathe new life into the Game Boy Adventure, and showed us what it could be without its past limitations. The level design feels ripped straight from the best in the series, with clever shortcuts laced throughout the world to allow for sequence breaking and out-of-order item upgrades. It has that dread-inducing atmosphere and the thrill of hunting every last Metroid, but plays and looks as good as the series' best. There were some real winners in the nominees, but Samus's Return tore right through them. Without getting into the endless Samus Returns AMR2 shit-flinging debate that's plagued V-Threads for years, we can at least appreciate one of the best fan games of all time, and a fun love letter to Metroid in general, at a time when the series arguably needed it the most.
Worst localization of Altimi. Fire Emblem Fates.
The chapter concludes with Tsubasa finally overcoming her nervousness around modeling and stripping off her clothes to impress the photographer. Overseas, she overcomes the fear of simply regular modeling instead and wears a completely different outfit, with a number of the poses that she makes also being made less suggestive.
Metal Gear.
What's Tokyo?
Chaos
The world I came
Wares.
from. How do I get back to where I came from?
Oh, that. Well, the thing is...
Zero Wang.
What happened?
Someone set up us the bomb. We get signal.
What?
Main screen turn on.
It's you.
How are you, gentlemen? All your base are belong to us. You are on the way to destruction.
What you say?
You have no chance to survive, mate, your time. Ha ha ha. All your base, all your base are belong to us. All your base, all your base are belong to us.
rockstar, but I'll never be a critic. I might like porno, but Baywatch is fucking sick. I might have screwed your sister, but I'll never screw your mom. I might have gone to uni, but at least I know I'm done. I might have my small penis, but at least not by owning a gun. I might not be homosexual, but I've slept with a guy who's won. I might agree with Jesus, but I got no religious belief. At least I clean the drops up when I piss on the toilet seats. I might be a cunt. Whoa, whoa. I might be a cunt, but I'm not a fucking cunt.
Nika 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 dummy, nika 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 dummy, nika 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 dummy, 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 nika 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 dummy.
I'm a barrack for power, but never for the crows. I might watch a current affair, but I watch Frontline also. I might like Tarantino, but sometimes you gotta wonder. I might not tell the truth all the time. Hey, what's your mom's number? I might be a cunt. Whoa, whoa. I might be a cunt, but I'm not a fucking cunt. But I'm not a fucking cunt. But I'm not a
Exits to freeways twisted like knots on the fingers. Jewels cleaving skin between breasts. Your Cadillac breathes 400 horses over blue lines. You are going to Reseda to make love to a model from Ohio whose real name you don't know. You spin like the Cadillac was overturning down a cliff on television. And the radio is on, and the radio man is speaking, and the radio man says women were a curse. So men built Paramount Studios, and men built Columbia Studios, and men built Los Angeles. It is 5 a.m., and you are listening to Los Angeles. It is 5 a.m., and you are listening to Los Angeles. And the radio man says it is a beautiful night out there. And the radio man says rock and roll lives. And the radio man says it is a beautiful night out there in Los Angeles. You live in Los Angeles, and you are going to Reseda. We are all in some way or another going to Reseda someday to die. And the radio man laughs because the radio man fucks a model too. Gone savage for teenagers with automatic weapons and boundless love. Gone savage for teenagers who are aesthetically pleasing, in other words, fly. Los Angeles beckons the teenagers to come to her on buses. Los Angeles loves love. It is 5 a.m. and you are listening to Los Angeles. It is 5 a.m. and you are listening to Los Angeles. I am going to Los Angeles to build a screenplay about lovers who murder each other. I am going to Los Angeles to see my own name on a screen, 5 feet long and luminous. As the radio man says, it is 5 a.m. and the sun has charred the other side of the world and come back to us and painted the smoke over our heads an imperial violet. It is 5 a.m. and you are listening to Los Angeles. It is 5 a.m. and you are listening to Los Angeles. You are listening. You are listening.
Hey V, before we go back to the show, I just want to say something to you. It's our 9th show, and technically that means it's our 9th birthday. So I just want to thank you for engaging and watching the VGAs. This show would not be possible without you. Okay, that's enough stupid shit. Let's go back to the show. I'm done. I don't want to record shit like this ever again.
Kamige Award for Best Edoge.
The nominees are
Evenical 2, The Imperial Gatekeeper. Koikatsu Party. AI Dungeon 2. Sengoku Rants.
Warning, enemy approaching.
You did it.
Some of you are probably thinking to yourself, wait a minute, I remember coming to that game years ago. Well, you're right, broski. Sengoku Rants got an official release in the West this year, 13 years after its initial release. In other words, the game is now old enough that Rants himself is okay with fucking it, if it was a cute girl. It's got all the hallmarks of a great game. Fun battle system, over 100 recruitable characters, girls for pretty much every non-degenerate fetish, upwards of 120 plus hours of content, great story and writing, and, most importantly, an actual difficulty curve. Despite its age, it still remains a shining example of a porn game, where the game is more fun than the porn.
Face it. What's the worst? Wait, no. No.
Seal of Quality Award for Biggest Technological Blunder. The nominees are WWE 2K20,
Anthem,
Yeah, why is it
Google
so
Stadia.
It's like almost unplayable. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Fallout 76.
Pokemon Sword and Shield. Warning, enemy approaching.
Fallout 76.
Jesus Christ, Todd. Your game was so bad it won 2 years in a row. How does that even happen? Fallout 76's technical issues were hardly restricted to 2019, and if anything, somehow got worse this year. Between the terrible optimization, the rampant hacking, and the horrendous technical bugs that came with each update, the game has somehow only managed to become even more unplayable as the content came. Couple this with delaying fixes for said bugs and hacks, players literally looting each other's inventories, and banning the few people who manage to exploit the game into something somewhat entertaining, just manages to make this piece of shit even more of a joke every month it continues to string along on life support. It's fascinating that a bunch of Russians managed to cobble together a better online Fallout experience in their spare time than a major studio with hundreds of millions of dollars at their every whim. But ultimately, Bethesda is no stranger to fans salvaging their franchises anyway, I suppose.
Not Important Award for Worst Character. The nominees are Alex, Borderlands 3's entire cast, Seer Junda, Hop, Sylvanas Windrunner, Warning, enemy approaching. Alex. Alex is the postmodern everyman for the postmodern RPG. From the incoherent, rambling monologues, to the consistently defensive and insecure posture, down to the incredibly punchable face and signature Soylent grin, grimace. Despite his background as a college graduate, Alex's intuition and awareness are completely lacking throughout the story, and you find him time and time again in the shadow as fellow party members point out his complete disregard for social cues as reprehensible, but never beyond a quick scolding or two. Many defenders of Y2K are quick to point out Alex's shortcomings as something relatable, but he's just like you! Except not. It's just like any other hipster douchebag that thinks everybody else acts and sees the world just like themselves. Alex doesn't emotionally grow or transcend in any way throughout the story. His existence meanders a fruitless pursuit of records, pussy, and job hunting that string you along the yellow brick road to nowhere. You meet several party members that, while also flawed, honestly could have filled in for Alex at any time, and nothing of value would be lost. Kiryu Award for Best Character. The nominees are
Looks like this won't be a
Nero,
total waste of time after all. Hey, jackass! Did your mother ever...
Baba.
Well,
Leon.
good thing we found each other. I don't know what to expect anymore.
Virgil.
You're a smart one,
Dante.
Martin. You notice the electric and water out too?
I expected nothing less.
Warning, enemy approaching.
Dante. Our favorite pizza party man is back, and it feels so good to say fuck you to that 2013 reject. Dante's been through some real shit over the years, from crazy crossovers to weird characterizations, and even being stuck in pachinko hell. But he still manages to get through it with a wink and a smile. Things haven't always been easy though, especially in DMC5 where his theatrics and quips don't save him from an ass beating or two. But at least that gameplay is still stylish as ever. That's part of the reason he stays so damn lovable, since even if things don't get as wild as his cutscene antics, dishing out taunts and combos as him still feels great. He may not be as motivated as his brother, but he still has the chops to sit on top of this award.
Aesthetics Award for Best Visual Aesthetics. The nominees are Katana Zero, Astral Jade, Devil May Cry 5, Baba Is You, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, Warning, enemy approaching. Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. From has always managed to flesh out their game's worlds and backgrounds marvelously through the designs of the maps and characters. For example, the moment the character grapples up to one of the first ledges and enters the Ashina outskirts, the camera adjusts itself to introduce the player to the setting that the bulk of the game revolves around, Ashina Castle, a tall, sprawling castle complex situated in the snowy mountains of a mythicized Japan. It is from this initial scene that the rest of the game builds its visual ideas on, an epic, lonely feeling of adventure, and a sense of awe, anticipation, and dizzying vertigo. From used all the lessons they learned designing Dark Souls and Bloodborne, dusted off the aesthetics they used to enjoy during the PS2 era with Kuon and Tenchu, and realized all that on Sekiro.
Ah, hell of a year, huh? Now this comes as a surprise to me too, but I've actually played a lot of the games that came out this year. Let's see, Resident Evil 2. Now that was a horror game. Mortal Kombat 11. Honestly, I always thought it was a 2, but okay. What else came out this year? Oh, there was Ion Fury. Yeah, they don't make shooters like that anymore. They made a Star Wars. Even a new Doom. People kept saying it got delayed, but I played it. Ain't nothing like the old one. Call of Duty. Even Battlefield got the Pacific Theater. Anyway, I just wanted to say my thanks to Vidya for making me feel relevant again. So, I thought I'd do a little something for you guys. So I dug out the Nintendo and I thought we could play a little Wii Sports. Just like the good old days. What do you say, kiddo? Did you hear something? Oh, sweet Jesus!
Pixels Are Art Award for Most Pretentious Indie Game. The nominees are Indivisible,
I'll bury you.
Wherever this is, if I can't...
Disco Elysium,
Y2K, a postmodern RPG.
Life is Strange 2, chapters 2 through 5.
Fuck you!
Kind
Get
words.
tired, play some punches! Come on, cut! I'm 50-year-old man, come on! And I'll knock the fuck out of you!
Warning, enemy approaching.
Y2K, a postmodern RPG. The Mario RPGs, the Shadow Hearts trilogy, The Legend of Dragoon, and, of course, Mother 3. All of them have battles with timed inputs to spice up combat. Combat is often where you'll spend a good chunk of an RPG, and Y2K somehow took the worst parts of these to turn each and every encounter into an absolute boring chore. Not only are the minigames and timing aspects not enjoyable, but the damage boosts are pathetic for how long it can take to actually get a single attack off. In addition, Y2K has visuals, so why does the text need to explain multi-target effects on each and every unit when Dragon Quest VIII streamlined this shit 15 years before Y2K released? These better games did what they did to make battles more than spamming A to keep the players engaged, whereas Y2K adds tedium on purpose for the sake of homage, without studying why mechanics worked, and, clearly, without listening to any criticism from playtesters, assuming this mess was even playtested to begin with.
Niche Award for Best Game That Nobody Played. The nominees are Remnant from the Ashes, enemy approaching. Etrian Odyssey Nexus.
It's the end of an era, and what a banger to end it on. It had been 12 years since Etrian Odyssey's first release on DS, and until the EO team changes things up for the future, it'll be the last we'll see of this series. It's not all sad though, as many beloved characters, FOEs, and classes showed up for one last hurrah. While the Sonic Mania approach may be off-putting to some, at least a lot of it was remixed to keep it fresh. It's a shame it came out so late, since a lot of people have put away their 3DS and moved on. We can only hope that the EO team will make a comeback somehow, and rekindle our passion for dungeon diving once more.
Oh? What are you saying? You saying I look different from what you remember? Huh? Well, aren't you adorable? Huh? I'm a demon, sweetie.
What are you gonna do with your time? Enough's enough, man. I'm sick and tired of it. Stop
so fucked up.
VGA exclusive premiere.
From day one, you fuckers wouldn't stop spamming the board with these lyrics, so I think I speak for everyone when I sarcastically say, what a surprising result. DMC5's soundtrack does its job and does it well, dynamically getting more and more intense the better you perform, leading to some rather comical professional reviews and awkward gameplay footage from major industry insiders. But it's because of this feature I think it's safe to say, we all know why some of you voted for other games.
VR Award for Best Game released in 1999. The nominees are Age of Empires 2: The Age of Kings, Roller Coaster Tycoon, Silent Hill, Super Smash Bros. System Shock 2. Warning, enemy approaching. Super Smash Bros. Over 20 years ago, the ideas of Smash were mere playground banter and crayon drawings. In 1999, Sakurai helmed the game that let people prove their favorite character could beat up yours. Not only that, but characters brought their most famous moves, and even some new ones, to the table. The Outfoxies wasn't too well known, so it was pretty unheard of to see platforming, items, and arena fighting mixed, but Namco never had Yoshi swing the hammer from Donkey Kong or DK himself throwing Pokeballs at people's faces. People may give items shit, but they're also part of what gave it identity, popularity, and kept it fresh for so long, because after scrambling for a game changer, anyone could turn the tides, or be stuck with a worthless dud. Smash 64 was light on single-player content, but it was more about the social aspects of multiplayer, especially with all 4 controllers creating then unheard of levels of chaos. That said, everyone was shitting bricks when Challenger Approaching appeared, since magazines and news outlets at the time kept details somewhat secret. Compared to later entries, there was no newcomer hype or roster arguments, just a sense of wonder, having as much fun as you could, and enjoying it with other people as you smashed each other into orbit.
Someone once said that you can't go home again, but they lacked vision. And a temporal discombobulator.
What? It crashed. Dang it.
Hello, Evan674, showing you a tutorial on why your Vegas Pro 8 might not be working. Let me make it this. We need to click on it and go to creating File IO Manager, and we'll stop. Windows will try to find a solution and end up closing it. And now, click, it'll stop, but then it will go through. Works like a charm. For some reason it seems to take a little bit longer on startup when you do that, but yeah. And here you go.
Nice of the princess to invite us over for the big party, eh, Luigi? Luigi, look! It's from the PGA's Slime Food Arts.
A lot more about it than I do. Please welcome Demon Souls expert and my co-host for this video, Deck.
I didn't really like the first Pokemon in the game. No.
Hello and welcome to my part 2 of Demon Souls rant. So,
Back before things got dark, Demon Souls was the hardest ass kicker on the PS3 block. It took the atmosphere of King's Field, but used a third-person perspective and made combat actually care about weight and movement, and it threw it all in a world full of danger. It made you take caution to avoid its traps and carefully plan your attacks on enemies. Rushing in like a fool would only lead to a painful end, where the now infamous sting of continuing hurt even more than dying. If that weren't enough, several bosses were real assholes, and even they didn't compare to the dickery involved in PvP. Other players could help you dodge doom as often as they brought it to you, and a lot of this applies to Dark Souls and its successors too, but the OG brought it to the table first. Online lasted a whole 9 years, and we can only hope someday it comes back in some fashion. Anything remotely hard nowadays is called the Dark Souls of whatever, but the demon is what made us scared of the dark to begin with.
racing faster every minute. What could I do more? Yeah, I'm really not sure. I know I'm running circles, but I can't quit. I'm so confused about what to do. Sometimes I wanna throw it all away, controlling everything in sight. Feeling weak, I don't feel right. Telling me I have to change, telling me to act my age. But if all that I can do is just sit and watch time go, then I'll have to say goodbye. Life's too short to watch it fly, so watch it fly.
Hi, I'm here from Automata, and you're watching the Video Game Movies.
Zero out of 10's award for worst game of this decade. The nominees are Duke Nukem Forever,
Fuck off, man, that's bullshit! Fucking circle jerk! A better walking simulator!
The aliens are coming!
Freeman.
We've been compromised!
Spit it out, Corporal!
Oh, Colonel. We are so fucked.
Fallout 76.
To who?
Mass
To
Effect
who?
and
your
Andromeda.
goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with...
Warning, enemy approaching.
Fallout 76. Fallout 76 suffers from identity crisis. Bethesda can't decide either to make it a messy, broken pile of ideas or a messy, broken pile of glitches. It wasn't fair for the lost souls who sunk money on this game at launch. But to kick them while they're screaming, bogged down with unplayable glitches, hackers and exploiters constantly ruining the ecosystem, discrimination and division over a subscription fee to play the game privately? I mean, what the fuck? Bethesda couldn't leave Fallout 76 to sink without taking everyone else as collateral. Fallout 76 also takes this award as a representation of a shitty practice game publishers concocted called Games as a Service. Publishers will make developers take perfectly good single-player games, then remove most of the content until the base game is a bare-bones experience, and then meagerly reselling said content back to the gamers over the span of months, turning the user base into the digital cattle that publishers always wanted you to be. So thank you, Fallout 76, for showcasing how these types of games stained this whole decade.
Ten out of 10's award for least worst game of this decade. Nominees are Fallout New Vegas,
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Dark Souls,
Bloodborne,
Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance,
Nier Automata,
Warning, enemy approaching, Dark Souls. Can any other game in this last decade say that they've been as influential to the modern gaming community as Dark Souls has? Back when Demon's Souls and Dark Souls released, contemporary games had an issue of being too easy and being too movie-like, so that every pea-brained journalist could complete them. The two Souls games called back to a more nostalgic time when beating a game could be considered an accomplishment. But while Demon's Souls experimented, Dark Souls refined. Its notorious reputation, which From and Sony made full use of in their marketing campaign, earned the respect of many V-goers and normie gamers alike. The game had something everyone could enjoy. Power gamers enjoyed the PvP and the endless ability to grief and torment others. RPG and action players enjoyed the somewhat simple yet still exciting gameplay and the build variety that came with it. And narrative-inclined players loved the lore, which rewarded those who paid attention to every detail in text and subtext. While From has been trying to move further and further from the genre, the Souls fag has endured, endlessly respawning at the bonfire for just one more Souls-like that could possibly live up to the feeling of playing Dark Souls for the first time.
VGA exclusive premiere.
I'm a monster, I'm a hunter, let my demons show. Hold on tight, I run the night, I hit the gas and go. Now or never, live forever, I'ma take what's mine. Heart is pumping, keep it coming, better running high. I was born for this, I was born for this. I was born for this. I was born for this.
Most Hated Award for Most Hated Game of the Year.
And the nominees are
Life is Strange 2, Chapters 2 to 5.
He's gonna be fine.
Daniel! You're not a little wolf anymore.
Y2K, a postmodern RPG.
That's your sole survivor.
Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Wolfenstein, Youngblood.
Anthem.
Warning. Enemy approaching.
Y2K, a postmodern RPG.
You know, on paper, Y2K doesn't seem all that bad. A surface-level Paper Mario-inspired battle system crossed with WarioWare microgames, all wrapped around an Earthbound aesthetic, definitely has potential. Weirder genre fusions have worked before. But this isn't a game that was most hated because it was successful. Y2K's sales were at best modest, and it was mostly promoted through word of mouth and by the developers at gaming conventions. This was a game that was most hated because it picked a fight with everybody to ramp up hype and get them to try out the game. It's a game nobody wants to touch, and how can we blame them? Be it the Elisa Lam controversy, the plagiarism controversy, the offending of the gay community, the immersion-busting Satoru Iwata tribute, everyone seems to have a bone to pick with these guys. And on the topic of bone, I think I'm gonna
No, you cannot joke about that.
Yeah, that's not funny.
Game Freak.
That's not the kind of humor we do on this show.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's just, it's been a rough few weeks, Murray. Ever since I killed those
400 Pokemon.
You're serious, aren't you? You're telling us you killed those
400 Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me get this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
I do. And I'm tired of pretending it's not.
Gameplay.
It's subjective, Murray. Isn't that what they say? All of you, the system that knows so much, you decide what's right or wrong the same way that you decide what's fun or not. I killed those guys because they were awful. Everybody is awful these days. It's enough to make anyone crazy.
Okay, so that's it. You're crazy. That's your defense for killing
400 Pokemon.
No. They couldn't carry a
Video game.
to save their lives. Oh, why is everybody so upset about these guys?
We are making cuts to improve animations and balance the game. Have you ever made a game before?
Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. You think
The Pokemon fan base.
ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves? They don't. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys, that we won't werewolf and go wild.
You finished? I mean, there's so much self-pity.
Game Freak.
You sound like you're making excuses for killing those
Pokemon.
Not everybody, and I'll tell you this, not everyone is awful.
You're awful.
Me? I'm awful? Oh yeah, how am I awful?
Playing my
Video game.
inviting me on the show. You just wanted to make fun of me. You're just like the rest of them.
You don't know the first thing about me, pal. Look what happened because of what you did, what it led to. There were riots out there. 2 policemen are in critical condition. You're laughing. You're laughing. Someone was killed today because of what you did.
I know. How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
What do you get
I don't think so.
when you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with your
loner
jokes.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash?
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get.
Call the police.
You get what you fucking deserve.
Least Worst Award for Least Worst Game. The nominees are Ace Combat 7, Skies Unknown,
Baba Is You,
Resident Evil 2,
Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice.
Devil May Cry 5.
Warning, final boss approaching.
Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice.
At this point, is there any fantasy setting that From couldn't pull off? Miyazaki and his team again deliver on another action game that manages to hit the perfect notes of difficulty and style. The game is a weeaboo's wet dream, filled with vistas of locations both fantastical and uniquely Japanese. And it doesn't just look good either. The gameplay takes elements from both Tenchu and the Souls series, yet still manages to stand on its own. Grappling from rooftop to rooftop with your arm allows a much greater sense of freedom and exploration compared to the normally linear levels of other action games. And the focus on poise and parrying over health in combat further sets it apart from the others of its genre. Plus, it's not often that a game manages to truly challenge you all the way up to the final boss. When almost every boss is some sort of casual filter, you know you've got a game even V can admit is good.
宇宙にまで膨れ上がった地球連邦を支配して54年、ジオン公国の掲げる人類一人一人の自由のための戦いを神が見捨てるわけはない。諸君らが愛してくれたガルマ・ザビは死んだ。なぜだ。戦いはやや落ち着いた。諸君らはこの戦争を対岸の火と見過ごしているのではないのか。この悲しみも怒りも忘れてはならない。父も兄も連邦の無思慮な抵抗の前に死んでいったのだ。それをガルマは死をもって我々に示してくれたのだ。この怒りを結集し、連邦軍に叩きつけて初めて真の勝利を得ることができる。この勝利こそ戦死者全てへの最大の慰めとなる。国民を立て、悲しみを怒りに変えて立てれよ国民。ジオンは諸君らの力を欲しているのだ。ジーク・ジオン。
Well, hi there, musical. I didn't see you there. Already the 7th year. Would you look at that? You've held on longer than most children in medieval ages. Well done. Good on you.
We slurp a can of Mountain Dew and turn off all the lights. When the sun gets away to move and the server's powered on, the sound of rage and underage will carry to the dawn. Playing hard, playing MMOs to the grinding evermore. Defeating foes against the pros, bodies will hit the floor.
Ranks of furry toes and husky toes, our arteries explode. Words in the hands are plenty of gold. Oh, now we're hanging on me, for we discuss our video game. On toward the Sunday morning, our turns carries on.
Playing on our PCs, playing on our console, deep inside our basements and our room. On Friday night, we play video games. No time for a girlfriend or a job. We feel the feels of Friday together, but alone. Through the video and the games we carry on.
It's Friday night, motherfucker!
As the clock strikes midnight and the kiddies go to bed, we'll share our games and anime with a wee of booze and friends. When the children are called in tonight, only friendship will go on. My microphone will give one final command, now attack until the dawn. So get ready guys, it's almost time to make the freaking start. And MC will whisper all our thoughts. Origin or Steam, or Xbox or PS3, all alone with all our games, and now the time has come. Playing co-op online, playing solo offline, day after day our video
channeling my inner Shrek here. Hit right sequence. Oh, fuck. Yeah, this grab. Shrek.